It's a long pause for drama, don't worry. Hello and welcome to the next and latest and perhaps greatest, we'll see, episode of the Testing Peers podcast. My name is Chris Armstrong and tonight I am joined by David Maynard.
Hello.
Simon Pryor.
Hello.
Russell Braxford.
Hiya.
And today we're going to be talking about a little known thing called quality engineering. But before we dive in, we have a sponsor message. Saffron QA continue to be our sponsor and they are also here to support the testing community. Therefore, should any of our listeners be in the market for a new job in testing or hiring new talent for your team, please reach out to Ben. He can be contacted via email at ben@saffronqa.co.uk and more details can be found in the show notes. Today, Mr. Banter Claus is Sir Russell Braxford.
Sir, wow, okay. Thank you for the knighthood. So I'm busy thinking about meetups and things at the moment. And when I think of meetups, something came straight into my head, and that was pizza. So my question for you for banter today is, what's your favorite pizza topping?
I think mine changes. I don't have one necessary favorite. I think it depends. I like the barbecue chicken topping. So Domino's is it the ranch barbecue or the Texas barbecue, one of the two, with the chicken and the barbecue sauce and all the meat and stuff. But sometimes I just fancy a good old pepperoni.
I would be very similar. I like pepperoni. I also quite like ham and mushroom, definitely mushroom. But the other day I had one from a well-known brand that had, rather than tomato sauce, it had ricotta. So it had ricotta, portobello mushrooms, and I think there was a bit of spinach on it. It was really, really tasty, but a bit of garlic in there as well. And that was one of the most memorable ones I've had.
Memorable pizzas, that's always a good thing. I've always enjoyed a pepperoni pizza, but I think probably the one I'm going to say is from Pizza Express. It's the Polo ad Astra, which is quite a nice one. It's got a bit of a sweet and a bit of garlic and a bit of tang to it. It's just quite a nice one.
Yes, I like that.
So it's an interesting one. I'm kind of going with Simon, which is it really does depend. I do quite like a barbecue sauce one. I think if I had to just pick a generic overall winner, it probably is kind of a rocket ham mushroom pizza. I'd go for something a bit traditional, I guess, more in style.
You ever make your own pizza?
I have. Used to work in a pizza place, well, Italian restaurant. So
Because if you're making one, sometimes you can end up taking loads of different things and having a few fun experiments.
I've got a pizza oven. So
Oh,
I had it for a significant birthday. So we have pizzas most months.
21, wasn't it, David?
Was, yes.
Yeah.
that was me thinking it was 18.
We've got an uni. It cooks a pizza in about 45 seconds.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
wow. Impressive. We do the make your own pizzas with the kids on a semi-regular Saturday night of TV dinner, which is quite fun. Yeah, like you say, mixture of toppings, chuck on what you want. All good fun.
Yeah, I made dough a couple of weeks ago and we didn't eat it on the day. So I put it into a Tupperware thing and it was like it broke through the seal of the Tupperware and just started invading the fridge. It was, the kids didn't know.
We should have a whole new sort of like dough segment in the show. That could be quite fun. Well, pizza is fun. What about quality engineering? What do we think? We've got someone here that's done a talk on quality engineering. Perhaps you'd like to kick us off, Simon.
Technically, I did a talk on the building a culture of quality engineering. This is I think part of the challenge is it's been up to now, there's not been a very clear definition of what quality engineering is, which hence we're discussing it. For me, it's definitely more than just the term testing. It's really about embedding quality all the way through the life cycle and being there to build quality in at the start, being there to report on quality, advocate for quality at the end, and all the way in between as well. And how that looks and manifests in different places is obviously different, but it's having that overall ethos of quality is everywhere.
And I think also that quality it's everyone's responsibility to have that quality. Do you think that you can have a quality engineer to instill quality engineering? Does it exist as a role?
You've got straight in with one of the tough sticking points.
I think so. As in any role can exist if you kind of define it as such and create it and give it a purpose and point. I think it's a very hard role, but I think like most roles, they're quite hard, really, if you want to do it for like to the letter of a job description. I don't think any of our jobs would be that easy, to be quite honest, if you did everything in it. And I think that goes with quality engineers. if you're looking at the holistic quality of an entire system from start to finish, it's a very broad spectrum, but we're looking at the testing of an entire estate. And you look at it that way, that's a broad spectrum. So I do think they can exist, should exist. It's interesting what that role would be, how many there should be, where they fit. I think those things play an important part. But I think definitely the role can or should exist.
There are some triggers, aren't there, when people say they're a quality engineer that people who aren't a quality engineer get upset about. Like I've heard people refer to their role as quality engineering and I say, for example, a software engineer will say, well, I do quality engineering, write code, clean code, whatever, do it to a high level of standard, they unit test it. Surely I do quality engineering, and they get upset that suddenly that name's been taken for a role that isn't theirs. It's just quite an interesting thought and way to look at it, isn't it?
I do software engineering, but someone else has got that job title, not me.
We could get down a rabbit hole on job titles here, couldn't
Exactly.
we?
It's an interesting point, though. You're right that, building quality into what we do is, again, what we all should hopefully achieve, everyone within the digital workspace. Be you an architect, be you a BA or anything else, you're trying to build, design, construct, analyze things for quality in mind. But it doesn't mean it can't be a role.
No.
We all do testing, but testing is still a role, if you see what I mean. Like I was in a debate the other day about code quality. Is assessing code quality testing or not? That's a whole different podcast. But my point was, some people would say it was testing. It's the ability of verifying and checking something. Some people would say it wasn't. It was developing and
Well, you
things
could
like
be a
that.
check engineer, couldn't you?
Yeah, so it's semantics to a degree, and you're always going to get people sitting on the fence that have an opinion to whether something is or something, and it does cause that clash of quality is everyone's responsibility. Can you have something like that? But then software is everyone's responsibility. And Chris is just pointing out his T-shirt here, which actually states on it, and I didn't realize quality is everyone's responsibility. Just podcast gold in the
It's
making.
almost like it was planned.
Yes.
We have the role quality engineer, and I pushed hard to move us from testing to quality engineering as a discipline, and have everyone's job titles changed to quality engineer. But actually, it is an interesting title because in the market, quality engineer, you search for quality engineering roles, you get manufacturing roles, you get other disciplines as well that are not software. Whereas testing, on the whole, most roles tend to be software testing roles. There may be
I think testing, QA, and QE, as far as job sites, seem to be interchangeable terminologies, which is probably half the problem.
Yeah, let's just stick the word software in.
I think that's the thing. No two companies really run it in the same way. Everybody's different. Everyone has a slightly different definition of what it is for them. For me, quality engineering encompasses everything that my team do, from being involved in requirements testability to writing tests to automation to risk identification to supporting later on in the process, rather than just actually running and executing tests. And it was more of a political move as well, to move away from testing equals only involved at the end, whereas quality engineering has a much more of a almost continuous quality feel about it when you talk about it.
It's a point though, isn't it? Which is we are all like, don't get me wrong, Simon, from what you just said there, the large part of what our traditional testers are doing is looking at that quality engineering. But so is the software engineer that helps build pipelines with the DevOps engineers. It is joined up, and that boundary is blurry, dotted, and having a title that defines it as one, not the other. Same way that testing as a title can cause conflict within, who. I think testing is like TDD is a classic one for me. Whereas if you've got testers in it and it's test-driven development, then the testers should write the test cases or the unit tests before the developers write the code. Became a pattern some people adopted, which was never quite the intent of TDD or anything else. But people literally take things literally. I see what I did there. And it's interesting how it can do that. And it all comes down to education still. It doesn't really fundamentally matter what we call it. It's about education. To your point, Simon, it's politically and something to shift something in an organization. We have to sometimes change the language we use to get a different emphasis on responsibilities. It is a interesting one because I'm with you, Simon. Actually, I prefer the role of sort of someone who is more of a quality engineer, but I see that much more of a coach working across teams to do everything rather than actually ascertaining anything that would have been considered testing traditionally. Much more of that building capability to consider quality than actually putting quality into systems, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
Do you think quality coach is a better thing if you're enabling everyone to help build quality, or I know it's terminology or whatever, instill quality into the products that we produce? If it's not necessarily their responsibility, then therefore are they a coach to enable others rather than an engineer that do it? And I think it depends on the context again as to the company and everything else. But
It does,
you know,
yeah.
I think there's space for both of them. I just wondered where other people stand on that.
Yeah. Mine, I lean more towards the quality coaching side. So they're more like quality engineer coaches than they are pure quality engineers replacing test engineering, if that makes any sense. It is a fine line, but it is more of this idea of it's not like test automation. It is building quality in, it's enabling quality. And I do think quality engineers could do that, but it depends on your setup. Like you can have it so you have one or two coaches and you have predominantly developers doing stuff and BAs and other people. It just depends on your makeup and design and the solutions that you're building and who's getting involved where. Because it does debate. Now, if I've got lots of people, I may not call them quality engineers personally. I may just call them engineers. So it just depends. There's so many different variations that you can get, really. But it's interesting because I think some differentiation people want. They want an identity. Yeah, there's 1,600 people in roughly where I work in the engineering sort of area. If I just called them all engineers, I think that would probably cause chaos rather than actually help the situation.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the engineering term is almost put in there to prove the fact that people have technical ability and to prove that we are technical as well. But I agree with Russell to an extent that maybe it is more of a quality coach, maybe quality enabler. You keep the QE then, and it's kind of more about setting the teams up with the right guidance and the right guardrails and the right ability to ensure quality is baked in. Doesn't mean doing the baking in yourself, but it means coaching and guiding the teams on ensuring that happens. Maybe that you're around to develop the automation. It may be you're around to ensure testability of the requirements or the user stories, but the actual activities of testing and stuff would become part of the team's responsibility and not the QE involved in that team.
I found it often in conversations along those similar lines. I don't disagree with your standpoint, but I found the reception of that conversation is, oh, so you're not going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a problem with like, well, if you're not going to do it, then you're dispensable. You're not really important. Surely a team of engineers who care about their quality don't need to be coached, don't need to be blah, 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 so on and so forth. And in those conversations, that's kind of meeting people where they're at, where their biases are, where they've come from. And one term to rule them all doesn't necessarily work, does it? And I think we find that with the context conversation often. In one of my recent engagements at work, I've sort of talked about quality engineering as a strategy, something that we all broadly wanted to do. To encompass that, it's everyone's responsibility, because all too often what happens is, if you think in terms of the wonderful world of a RACI, everyone maybe is accountable or they're informed or something, but no one's actually responsible. Then people just default back to what their main measure of success in life is, and they don't have that whole team mentality. And actually building sort of team mentality, whole team ownership of quality, it's tough. We live in a world of individuals.
You hit something I want to talk about there, which is like people not seeing the value in coaches. The best performing teams in sport, I use a sports analogy, all have lots of coaches, normally very targeted, very specific. They do drills, they do practice. That's what makes them the best of the best. That's why, who do we praise? We praise the manager. What's the manager in football called? A coach. Most of the time these things happen. What makes our teams stronger and better is often coaching. And it frustrates a lot out of me that we don't put a lot more emphasis on coaching our teams. We put it as part of a line manager's responsibility rather than actually having someone with the specialist skills that can actually help. I rather, in a big team, don't get me wrong, in a team of 3, this is overkill. In big areas, having specialists that can coach in a skilled area and actually using that across your teams to help build up skills. I've never achieved it, I'll not lie, but it really frustrates me because someone with knowledge that can coach, and we use external resources, do specific short-term training, but having those people to call upon and building that culture of coaching in our org on specialisms, I think is a crucial part of making a team going from being able to do 1,000 different types of tests to doing the right tests at the right time well.
Should quality be a specialism?
It's a grouping of a specialism. But quality in itself isn't a specialism.
Quality, yeah, you're right. Quality is not a specialism itself, but there are aspects within that how you get to high quality that require some level of specialism. Just picking up on the coaching point, I think there's a misunderstanding on what coaching can actually give you in a lot of scenarios. I think people hear coach, they don't think of how a coach asks lots of questions and gives people the ability to work things out for themselves by probing and prompting. They think directing, they think managing, they think training, and then they think, oh, that's expensive. We can't do that. We don't have the money for a coach. We don't need coaches. We can just go and do trainings. Well, no, actually, as you say, Russell, a coach is different. A coach can actually be side by side with the team and be really supporting them and nudging them and prompting them along a journey that makes them feel like they're making progress themselves rather than being told that's what you need to do next. This is what you need to do after that, etc., etc. It's, have you thought about this? And it just brings a different culture. So it's, again, what I tried to do with I tried to bring in our coaches into my current role, and the word coach in the title wasn't agreed on. They agreed to go with architect, which sets a whole different precedence. And the intention was these architects would be coaches within teams. And that's working in some areas, but other areas they've become pure automation people. And it's really, the idea was they were more coaches, coaching teams, enabling teams to do their own testing and their own automation rather than needing a team of 20 testers offshore to go and do the work for them. It's still a journey we're on.
I was thinking one of the things that you mentioned there was often people feel like it's that you do your training, get it done, and we've had some broad discussions around agile. I've done my Scrum training, so now I know how to do all Scrum things. And actually, a lot of these things, as with testing, it's more continuous than just something you publish and it's done. And probably the role of a coach should be more revered than it is, but also be viewed as something that is more of a continuous need than you're coached at the beginning. Like Russell said, in sports, the coach isn't there in the pre-season getting the teams ready and then goes, off you go, chaps. Have a good season. I'll see you again in July. Nice one. Context changes. You have to pivot. There's different unforeseen problems that happen across the time, and a coach is there to help people. And sure, people will become more experienced, and sometimes players become coaches down the lines, don't they? They use their experience to mentor and train and build other people up.
Yeah, and going back to sort of the quality aspect of it, quality can change, or the aspiration of what is perceived as good quality can change within a company and a product, and as you go along. So it's really important, and I think this is the difficulty in putting quality engineering into practice, is the fact that the quality coach or the quality engineer, well, there has to be a collective understanding of what is perceived at quality at that particular time, so that therefore they can all drive towards it. Otherwise, again, it's like anything, making assumptions. There can be very different aspects or a very different outcome depending on, and conflict because of the outcome of that.
Yeah, I think it does go back to that point, and I know we've done an episode on it previously. It's talking about what is quality, what does it mean, what does good quality look like? Once you've got those defined in your environment, your context, then that can then be the starting point to, okay, how do we build towards that? What can we do to work towards that North Star? And that can be those first steps on, okay, how do we now start baking that in? What practices do we need to look at? How can we identify ways of working that will get us there? And that all comes under that coaching and also the defining and building quality in from the start.
So do we want quality engineers in our team?
Yes.
Yes.
You have to say that, Simon, because...
Who is the team? What's the composition? What's the goal of the team? What's the purpose of the team?
So in our current places of work, thinking about it in that context, which is different to all of us, and will be different by the time some people listen to this and not, and it will change. But that's the context we know most about in our own domains. So where we work, would we see as a quality engineer adding some value to us? I guess is the point. The title, the role, in whatever we deem it to be, we've had a little bit of discussion about it. Do we see that as something that could add value to an organization which would be cost effective in our own minds? I'm not going to ask you for business cases or any of that sort of stuff for now, cost value analysis. But do we think it sounds like something that would advocate?
If they had the full ability to be involved in everywhere we felt they need to be involved, rather than being boxed into, well, you're just a fancy name for a tester, you just go and do testing. If quality engineering was fully embraced and actually they could be involved in coaching teams and defining requirements and testability requirements and shaping how testing's done, etc., but not actually doing the test, I'd take that in a heartbeat. Unfortunately, what happens in a lot of places, and I've spoken to several other people in a similar situation, is it does just become a rebrand of testing, and it's just basically doing the same job but just a different job title. And if we're really invested in what quality engineering is, and it is something different to I don't say just to software testing as in isolation, then we need to embrace that as a mindset, as an ethos, and try and change the way we do things to enable quality engineers to be effective.
It's the mindset is more important than an individual's title or role, but as I think we would agree, like a testing mindset or an agile mindset or whatever is more important, broadly speaking. I think the difficulty we often have in our industry is that a lot of the ways we work don't have absolutes. It's somewhere between the noughts and ones very often, and it's a spectrum between those. And so for one context, it could be absolutely correct that it's this thing, but mean something different. And this is a difficulty that we come around to all the time around semantics and these pieces. I think we would all broadly find ourselves on the same page with the value of quality engineering equaling principles X, Y, and Z. But whether that is reflected in our workplace as a job title, as an approach, as a strategy of those things, that will be reflected differently because of where we're at, where buy-in is, where budget exists, where responsibilities lie, how things are interpreted, what politics are like, geographical interpretations of these sorts of things. And that sounds rather non-committal. I understand that you asked a question, so I very politically sort of I went to it, but we thought it'd be good probably just to look at a few different definitions of quality engineering. I've got one that's from Inflectra, our friends there. Quality engineering, according to Inflectra's site, says that in simple terms, it's a systematic approach to building quality into your software from the very beginning. It encompasses a set of principles and practices aimed at preventing defects rather than merely detecting them after the fact. The goal is to ensure that quality is ingrained in every phase of your software development process. Does anyone else have any other ones?
I've got a couple. Can I use the one I've got for my own EasyJet team? Can I say that one? So we've got QE is more than just testing. It's about all elements of software delivery, from the product to the processes we follow and the people that do it. It's about building in a holistic approach to quality through the delivery cycle from day one. Kind of similar themes. And the other one I've got is from the Quality Engineering Charter. The definition is quality engineering is an ethos that emphasizes value-driven behaviors and a quality-first mindset. It isn't any one thing, it's all-encompassing, a strategic, holistic approach to quality encompassing the entire life cycle, embedding a culture of quality, continuous improvement, and repeatability that sets all organizations up to consistently deliver quality outcomes. I think they all kind of lean on the same thing, just worded in different ways. Russell, David, do you have any others?
Not that I can define in that sense. It's kind of what I said earlier, which is, quality engineer is someone who supports and enables the engineering of a quality-based solution via coaching, mentoring, involvement and engagement with the stakeholders and engineers involved in designing, building, and running an application or service. And that was one made up on the spot.
Very good.
almost
You should
better
almost
than-
write that down. Yeah.
Good it is recorded.
We need to
I can
transcribe
write it down later.
But I think it encompasses the theme of all of them is that it isn't just one person. It involves everybody. It involves, and it isn't just everybody, it's all processes and everything else. Everything should be built in order to think about the quality of what you're producing. It isn't one person's responsibility, it's a collective responsibility to use all the tools around you in order to drive quality forward.
Completely agree. I think the other thing that needs a good call out is one of our speakers from PeersCon 24, Jitesh Kasai, has a very good quality engineering newsletter, which you can subscribe to on Substack. Now, I do have the address somewhere, but yeah, I'll put it in the notes. But yes, it's definitely worth a subscription, and Jit does some very good articles on quality engineering. So what's next for quality engineering then? How does it move forward? Because it's kind of in that place at the moment where it's, what is it? What isn't it? What's next? Is it just going to be one of those things that for the perpetuity just sort of is an interchange with testing and quality assurance and just another name for what we do? Or is there a possibility it could develop into a brighter future?
I think it may become more mainstream in terms of a branding or a naming of a thing, and then may therefore have a more of a common understanding. But like test engineers do now, or QE or QA or any other label, it will be abused, misused, misrepresented, confused. All those situations will occur to it. I think the aim, what we're talking about, is building quality into the whole life cycle. I think that's a noble aim. That's a good thing. I think as a brand of a title or something that has a very valuable place in our kind of world, and it crosses divides, it breaks down silos. But if it is just a rebranding of testing to QE, I do think we lose that value. So like everything else, it's about defining it good enough, adding value rather than just renaming, rebadging something. And we know people will. It doesn't matter what happens, but making sure there is significant value in the label. And then obviously trying to make adoption valuable, worthwhile to people. I can think of so many case of examples where a buzzword has become so common it's actually become valueless. It's misused so much. It's misused more than it's used correctly. That actually just defeats the purpose of it. So in my view, it is kind of trying to get the testing community around a table to agree a commonish hope, start seeing roles and jobs and employers like your own place there, Simon, utilizing it and using it in a good way, and keep obviously promotion of that in a good way. So it is not just the latest change of a tester title to a test analyst title to a QE or title, and it is actually something more than actually just a rebadging to the latest fad.
It also means that it doesn't necessarily replace where there might be testers,
No.
test analysts in different roles. But, I think half the problem is that we've discussed about quality engineering being one thing and quality engineer being a different thing, perhaps who works in that space.
Yeah.
And getting people to agree to pretty much anything in the industry is quite difficult. And
It doesn't happen. Be realistic.
we're a craft of cynics who have got opinions, and we generally aren't very shy at talking about them. But one thing you broadly would say is that we are quite keen to sort of improve things and help understanding. And one of the things I think is quite important is to try and do is to pass the parent test, to at the very least be able to explain to them as quickly as possible in language that they would understand what it is that you do without any insider terms. And that's not an easy task. And I don't know whether explaining quality engineering would be any easier to a parent than explaining testing.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, I think I was
It's
just
definitely a challenge.
So I think what we say then is work towards consensus, work towards the noble aims, accept the fact that perfection's not going to happen. There hasn't been a job role within the test family that's been perfectly defined and reused, unless we make it a legal job title protected by law, with a clear common definition. Even then, it would only work in the country which law was applied. Reality is, even then, they get corrupted.
Well, let's not forget that in some countries, you can't have engineer in your title unless you own an engineering degree.
Yeah. Well, don't get me started on the word architecture in the UK. unless it has the word software in front of it, it would also be illegal. There's a professional Royal Institute of British Architects and so on. You're not allowed to just call yourself an architect. But anyway, let's not go down that road.
No.
It'll get me bitter.
Going back to job titles, that's not good.
Yeah.
I agree that if we're not careful, it can just become a buzzword. I think there's enough momentum behind it at the moment in order for it to be more established and be more accepted. But I think that people, as we've said, need to be far better informed as to what it is, so that therefore they can see in their own personal companies what good looks like from their own experiences or from their research that they've done. And if they don't think it's happened, then hopefully their workplace is a psychologically safe space in order to try and revert change in the right direction to instill the quality engineering mindset or the idea around it, so that therefore it doesn't become too pigeonholed or isolated or that buzzword or another name for testing.
Yeah, I think there was a really good question in one of our team meetings last week where someone said, are we really actually even QE yet? And it was the first time people have gone, oh, yeah, good point. It's not just a rebrand, is it? There is a difference. There's exactly that.
That's the key thing is, what does quality engineering look like? And I think we've mentioned it before, people can easily revert back to type of, okay, quality engineering is just testing under a rebrand. Whereas actually, no, it's not
different.
It's different. It's, as we've said, it's everyone's responsibility, and it's everyone, it's using all the tools we've got. It's not just someone saying we need to put quality into this.
I guess the only question is, do we need to rebrand ourselves?
What, the quality engineering peers?
Quality
QE peers.
QE peers.
QEP.
QEP.
Watch this space.
Let's leave it as it is for now.
At least we can still have peers con, irrespective of that.
Should we just rename ourselves peers?
Yeah, the peers. Fair enough. Thank you, guys. Very useful discussion tonight. Hopefully listeners have found that useful. If you've taken anything from that, then please let us know. Please reach out. You can find us on most of the socials under Testing Peers, mainly LinkedIn, or contact us at testingpeers.com if you want to get in touch. If you have questions, challenges, comments on episodes before, then please, we'd love to hear from you. And equally, if you'd love to rate and review us and subscribe to the podcast, it all helps us move up those magical podcast charts. Not that we're interested, really. Thank you again to Saffron QA for continuing to sponsor us. And if you weren't aware already, PeersCon will be back in 2025. It's on March 13th in Nottingham. Same venue, maybe slightly more people next time. We haven't decided the theme, or we haven't released the call for papers at time of recording. So we will be doing that over the summer period, I am sure. So look out for that. And that's at testingpeerscon.com. Or I think, Russell, you've managed to acquire peerscon.com as well.
I think so.
Excellent. So, yeah, look out for that. Get your tickets. They're selling well already. Thank you again to everyone, and we look forward to speaking to you next time.
For now, it's goodbye from the Testing Peers.
Goodbye.